And we're live. We're just going to take 2 minutes. Nobody's signed in yet, but there's going to be lots of people on soon. And Tanya is just sharing the post to her wall so that everybody can see, including all the people that I've blocked.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, getting ready to share.
Can you see it? Tanya is just sharing the post to her wall so that everybody can see, including all the people that I've blocked. Do you hear that echo?
So is there a delay? What should I be looking up?
Nobody signed, nobody can see, including all the people that I've blocked. I hear myself about 15 seconds delayed. Do you hear that?
So is there a delay? Yeah. What should I be looking up?
I've never observed that before. That's a problem. I hear myself about 15 seconds delayed. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a delay?
Yeah.
What should I be looking up?
I've never observed that before. That's a problem. I hear myself about 15 seconds delayed. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening?
Dual delaying.
Is there something on your computer? Has this ever happened before? This has never happened to me. Okay. I'm going to try logging this in again because I'm not sure what's going on there, and then it'll be better. It's never happened to me. Okay. I'm going to try logging this in again because I'm not sure what's going on there, and then it'll be better.
Tech difficulties.
I'm going to try logging this in again because I'm not sure what's going on there, and then it'll be better.
Tech difficulties. Tech difficulties. I'm hearing that all on your end, Tanya. Okay, I'm off now. I'm just back here.
You're back where?
With you here only, not on Facebook at all.
Okay, so it's fine now because I can't hear that echo at all. I think that
Are you on
whatever
Facebook?
was.
So we're on your live?
Did you take it off your Facebook wall?
I did.
Okay. So if you had it on your Facebook wall and you just closed the Facebook, then you shouldn't be able to hear it. Like the application.
Okay, so share it and then come back, be on your wall here.
Yeah, share it and then close any of your tabs that have Facebook
on it. Got it.
I think that's what the issue is. Just had to be some kind of technical delay. Just build the suspense up.
All right. So basically, I'm just here now. Facebook tabs are closed. I hit share. I'm presuming it's shared.
And I think we're good. See if there's any delay, but I don't think so.
Getting a little bit of echo.
No, I think we're good now. Okay. Crisis averted.
Tech.
All right. So this is Zak Roedee here with, am I pronouncing your name right? Tanja? Or is
Tanya. Yep. Canadians always say the Tanya. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And we are going to be discussing polarity today. I know this is a very sought after debate. I know for some people, you might end up being a little disappointed because I certainly have no intention whatsoever of this being anything other than a completely respectful debate. And I think that this is actually a perfect opportunity to show how two people can actually have differences in opinions and discuss them without being personally disrespectful in any way. And if everyone was able to do that when they came on my wall, they wouldn't have gotten blocked. So with that out of the way, you ladies first, I've given you the opportunity to start this debate off with however whatever question you want to address first, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for that. And I wanted to, publicly acknowledge, thank you for leading me through this new tech journey that I'm doing here with your application. So thanks for that. Also, many of you are going to be shocked because I'm wearing my pretty, nobody's ever seen me like this, my pretty princess look, because I wanted to make sure everybody knew, you know, who was the man, who was the woman in this. So yeah, we're clear about that.
We're both contributing to creating polarity here, and that's really important. We're role modeling that too.
Exactly, right?
Totally
Okay.
matters.
Though I do identify as polarity fluid.
Okay.
And I'm presuming you identify as polarity masculine.
I don't identify as anything. I'm just masculine.
Cool. All right. That's great. Because one of the things that I wanted to, if we could do something quickly, there's a lot of people who may not know who you are on my wall or who I am on my wall. Can we take just a moment and say, you know, what do you do? And why is the polarity thing? Why are we even having this polarity talk?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking for permission. That's very feminine of you.
I know. Surprising.
Go for it.
So I'm Tanja Diamond, and I've been teaching sex and relationships and things like that for over 35 years. And one of my realms of sexual polarity is that the whole energetic tantra male feminine aspect. So that's what I'm bringing to this equation. And I absolutely love to engage in expanding my mind and changing my mind about things and learning new things. So that's why I'm here.
And I'm glad you are. You're the only person who's accepted. So I got to give you big props for being that courageous.
I am wearing combat boots, however.
That's all you need for courage. You got those on. And we can't see it. So all we can see is your feminine dress. And that's what's important.
And then, so people don't know who you are on my wall, some of them. So
I did check out your wall just to see how many people were familiar with me. Not many, though. I didn't see very many that liked me very much, but that's okay. I'm pretty used to that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Another thing we have in common. Okay, so one of the things that I always love to start out with on anything is definitions. Because if we're throwing words like polarity around and things like that, and we don't actually have a definition to it, it's kind of hard to have a debate or conversation. So I kind of want to know what it is. There's two things or three things that really stood out when I went and looked at your wall, watched some of your videos, obviously studied what you're about. And one of those was understanding what you mean by polarity, what you mean by leading, and the submission or surrender, which one that you typically use when it comes to relationships and polarity.
Right. Okay. So here's my definition, and then you can give yours, and then we'll go from there. What I am talking about when I mean leading is when a person is trying to get an outcome in any way. So one of the ways that I like to illustrate it is if you think of an artist, right, who's a painter, and we'll say a painter, it could be sculptor, it could be dancer, it could be anything. And you can do that for many different reasons, right? You can do it to try to get an outcome, maybe to add value to people's lives, maybe to get it for attention, many different reasons. And those are all trying to get outcomes. The masculine is always trying to get an outcome, always. And that's really what purpose is, right? When that's his most important outcome is what he's leading to on purpose. And the feminine is not trying to get outcomes at all. She is expressing and she is receiving outcomes from her man. And whenever a woman asserts herself in any way, leads her man in any way, she is no longer receiving him. She is actually, either giving to him, right, or taking from him, either type of leadership, healthy or unhealthy. And that's what causes, or that's how a woman can cause extreme lack of polarity or reverse polarity in a relationship, is when she tries to get an outcome from her man instead of just expressing herself and inspiring her man to want to give her good outcomes, because that's what the healthy masculine does. He gives outcomes through his leadership.
Okay, so when a woman seeks an outcome, she is attempting to lead her man. The man is the one that should be seeking the outcome, and the woman should be assisting him to do that by her surrender, submission, by her...
Well, no, she submits, so that she is able to receive outcomes. If she's not submitting, then she's not able to receive a man's leadership. So yes, that's a part of it, and that's also how she shows respect for her man. But on top of that, if she's communicating and if she needs something from him, she needs to express that without trying to get an outcome. So
don't take out the trash. Please take out the trash, Zach.
Okay, first of all, no, this is one big thing. I don't want to do any interrupting on this live stream. I want to be really careful about that, and I'll give you the same respect. But yes, so saying like, can you take out the trash? That would be absolutely leading. And it's subtle because it actually, on the surface, sounds permissive, but there's an element of leadership in it, and there's a element of offering a solution that she wants rather than just expressing the problem so that her man can solve that for her.
So an example then would be that she says the trash is full. I mean, I'm just use that example and walk me through it.
Yeah,
please.
yeah, okay. That would be one good. That would be one way of doing it. But you know what? This is what a lot of women have difficulty with, is that when a man is actually really leading, and a lot of men are not doing it, and they're not inspired to, and they haven't been taught to do it, he is going to, not all of the time, but most of the time, be anticipating what his woman needs so that she doesn't even have to express anything. And so, you know, if a man knows ahead of time, like, listen, you know, I like my wife, for example, she doesn't like a messy kitchen. I know that. And I know that causes her stress. I know that makes her frustrated because she's told me. I've asked her how it makes her feel. So I know that. So I am anticipating her needs at all times to make her feel good, because that is how I lead as an act of service for her, and how I create polarity in the relationship by anticipating those needs. But for that to work, for it to feel good for me as a man, and also for it to feel really good for her, she can't be leading that in any way. If she sets that expectation in the relationship where it's like, hey, Zach, I want you to keep this kitchen messy, right? Now she's leading. Now she's creating an expectation for me. And now I cannot lead from that because she has already tried leading. The only thing I can do in that situation is submit to her expectation. And that's not going to feel good for me, because the only way that I can serve her is through my leadership. And so if she expresses herself as there's multiple ways to express yourself as a feminine woman. You can express a problem, right? Like, it's not in that situation, you might say, like, not from a place of complaining, but just like, actually, no, in this situation, I would just express the feeling first. So the problem is her feeling, right? The problem is her feeling. How does a messy kitchen or the trash always piling up make her feel? Well, I feel really overwhelmed. I feel stressed, etc. Right? So she just expresses that feeling to me, not to try to get me to change my behavior, but just to share it. And now I can give her the gift of my leadership, and which includes the anticipation of her needs, right? As a gift to her, to make her feel good, to make her feel loved, and to minimize her stress.
I feel like I would never have to say anything again. I'd be sitting on the porch sipping mint juleps, just waiting to take you into my mouth whenever you walked up.
Well, and when you have a polarized relationship, that's pretty much the response from a woman, because she feels so loved, she feels so respected. It's like, yeah, that would be a natural response, a natural result. And then in that way, both man's needs and woman's needs get met.
So my needs as a woman are, according to you.
Are you asking me that as a question?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, a woman has many needs. One of the most important ones is that she feels cared for. She feels devotion from her man. And that obviously there's a lot to that, right? But it is, it's the need to be, way of putting it, she is being devoted to, which means she is being protected. She is being provided for, not just in a physical way, but also in an emotional way, right? So she feels like she never has to try to get an outcome from her man. All she has to do is express, and then so she'll physically be provided for and her heart will be provided for. She doesn't have to try, because trying is masculine. Feminine is just being. Trying all the time, especially with your man, is exhausting.
Okay.
And you can add to that too, because obviously there is more needs than that for a woman. So I would love to hear what you need as a woman, and then we can expand on that.
Well, I definitely have a difference between what I see as submission and surrender. To me, if we're looking at my definitions, submission is giving away your power and surrender is stepping into it.
Okay. Why do you see it that way?
Because submission is that I am totally, absolutely 100% letting go of even myself. Surrender is stepping into my power, which can be stepping into my power to let my man lead. Because you use that word, let, the woman lets her man lead, which to me always implies she's topping from the bottom. But the idea that submission means to squelch anything that is literally part of me or mine, versus surrender means stepping into the things that I want. And maybe that is wanting to be led by my man, or maybe that is not wanting to be led by my man, or sometimes wanting to be led by my man. Mm-hmm. So there's the difference to me in those two things. Okay. Submission, literally, so I don't know if you're using those interchangeably or what you think about that.
I have flipped definitions, and my reason for it is submission is you are making a choice to submit your power, whereas surrendering is it is a form of giving up. It's like you're surrendering your ship. You are choosing, or sorry, not choosing, but you're powerless and have to let it go. One question I have for you, I don't care that much about semantics. What I do care about is, one thing I do care about, do you feel triggered in any way by using the word submission, or it's just a preference to use surrender?
I don't actually feel triggered by anything but sexual predators.
Good.
So,
that's a good thing to feel triggered by. I understand that.
Sexual predators trigger me to go out and then kick some serious ass. So that definitely stepped me up into my masculine, which I really, really enjoy too. So basically, the reason that semantics really kind of matter in the context for me is that because I find a lot of relationships have problems with actually even having the same definitions about what things mean. And I see what you're saying with the surrender, but I always think about surrenders when they're waving the flag, which is a personal choice, whereas submission, being enslaved, having these kind of things, even in our world when we're talking about domination, play and things like that.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Continue.
So to me that, it does make a difference. Energetically, all words have power. And I don't know where you live in the world of energy. I've seen you say some things like the spiritual people are bringing us down or whatever. And I happen to be a spiritual person who's very practically grounded. But those energetic components of language mean something. They live deep in our brain. They're primal. We've been raised up to hear certain words and feel certain things about them. So that's why it matters to me.
I agree. And I think that there is a lot of negative connotations to the word submission. And the main reason why that is because there has been so much unhealthy, I actually call it subjugation, not submission, where a man is controlling his woman with energetic force to subjugate her, right? So that is submission to me. That is very unhealthy. And healthy submission if you look at the word submit, if you submit a paper, right? If you submit your paper to your professor, that is fully by choice. There is nothing about that where there is no choice, where the professor is forcing you to do that. That is
Sure.
that is a choice that you choose to do.
Yeah.
And you can do the exact same thing with your power, where you submit your power to make the decisions to him. And that is something, of course, that a woman, a self-respecting woman can take back if a man is not using that gift appropriately.
Yeah, and so as a woman who sees myself as, polarity fluid, meaning that I'm just as happy being in my kick-ass warrior as I am being in my feminine, I find that I don't actually, how do I want to say this? So polarity, what we're talking about for me, includes sexual chemistry. So if I run into a man whose pheromones, his immune system is opposite of mine, it creates sexual chemistry that is off the chart. We either have chemistry that's tribal or chemistry that is based on our immune system, pheromone, I have to have babies with you now. So if I smell my 10 guy who's chemically that way to me, it doesn't matter what he looks like. I want to have his babies, and I immediately am in my feminine. There is no doubt. I don't try anything. Nobody's giving. I'm literally surrendering to the chemicals that are raging through my body. And a lot of people don't really understand that aspect. So that's a natural polarity. That's not something somebody has to try. In fact, you can't change that. It either is or it is not.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that a lot of couples struggle in that aspect. It's more likely a woman will be in her masculine with her man when their chemical pheromones are closer to brother and sister and tribe.
Okay, so I am not an expert on pheromones, and that's what I will say is that when a person focuses on polarizing themselves, I don't know if the pheromones change, but what I do know what changes is that attraction definitely does change. So there are a lot of fully depolarized couples where there is no end of conflict, needs do not get met, right? And there is just disrespect on both sides, in large part due to the fact that you cannot have respect. A woman cannot respect her man, and a man cannot respect his woman when there is a lack of polarity. Polarity and respect go hand in hand. And so when both partners or just one partner, and often it is one partner, works on polarizing themselves, regardless of what's going on with pheromones, attraction will massively go off the charts.
Well, so we agree on the polarity helping relationships. Absolutely. So that is a point that we definitely agree on. Polarity is one of my points that I teach, but I do teach it from an energetic, chemical, and other thing and other practices, like you're saying, the idea of allowing your man to lead, which I always think is still funny. It's like a man leads or he doesn't. A woman doesn't allow a man to lead. If he's a good leader, he's leading. And I guess the difference there is.
Go ahead.
I guess the difference
I'm breaking
there
my own rule.
I guess the difference there is that making conscious choices to set up your relationships in certain ways with role designations of how things can be, that takes our mind, right? That takes our logical mind to say, I want to be in a mostly conflict-free, comfortable, safe relationship where our roles are completely defined. We know where each other is and what's going on. And that to me is one way definitely to do it. I don't know that it always encompasses the natural order of the other things at play, which is pheromones, which don't change. Pheromones are forever. Most women will say they want their man to lead, but can't, they stay in their masculine competing with him. So in that competition mode, man to man, there's not a lot of sexual polarity unless the couples are into the same gender, in which case then, okay. But it's a dance. So respect is the part to me that I'm having, like, can I be in polarity in fluid polarity with my man, where we're dancing back and forth between these two polarities, because it's only at any given moment that that polarity needs to be in polarity, not in same, to create that spark. Respect has many issues to it. Values, how you treat somebody, things like that.
Yes, there is more to respect other than just polarity. Absolutely. Yeah. So what you are expressing, though, is essentially when you are talking to a man, and then there's some men, of course, pheromones separate from this, but some men will polarize you naturally into your feminine, and some don't. Well, you are essentially relying on a man to polarize you into your feminine instead of just always being there automatically. And this is something that a lot of women, a big problem for women, where they are, and this is a mindset, right? They are reliant on a man to polarize them so that they can feel feminine, right? And imagine, like, if I had that mindset as a man, like, oh, like, I'm just kind of wishy-washy all the time and not really a strong leader. I need like the most ultra feminine woman who never leads and just is vulnerable and super soft so that I can feel like a man. And so for the goal of polarity, when someone wants to polarize their relationship, it's not just the fact that you do polarize your relationship. You do it by it's difficult, right? You have to really push yourself through a lot of fears, a lot of traumas, a lot of limiting beliefs that have been holding you back and keeping you in a more depolarized state or fluid state, so that you have no interest in being anything except strongly in your polarity. And then you start polarizing everybody. Like, as a woman, you start polarizing men who are not very masculine at all. And as a man, you can polarize a lot of women who are quite masculine.
Yeah, I think we agree on there. But you said pheromones aside, but my point about pheromones was they're never going to be aside. They're directly into our limbic system. They control us in so many ways that we cannot mindset over that. So just to be clear about that part, there is no mindset over pheromones. And so I think sometimes people are trying to polarize when they don't have polarity, regardless of how feminine the woman expresses herself, regardless of how leading the man is. If that's not lined up within a range, it doesn't happen. They're actually expressing themselves as neutral, and there's no polarity created. So that's science and chemistry. So that's that part. I wanted to say, because I agree with the whole, like, yes, there needs to be the leading. And I wanted to tell a quick story about how I came to be that. I wanted to be my dad when I grew up. So I was definitely masculine. I dive with Navy SEALs. I rappel out of helicopters. I fly helicopters. I do masculine shit. And I fucking love it. Never going to give it up. Fine. That's one aspect of me. And typically men who were not intimidated by that, who wanted to step up and say they were going to lead, I 100% could be inspired by their mastery and leadership, right? I didn't have to like down into the feminine. Now, when it comes to attraction, if I'm attracted to a man, like, I have had a shitload of sex in my life, and I'm pushing 60. This year I'm going to turn 60. I will become a giggling idiot schoolgirl that blushes. In the face of a man I'm attracted to, I lose all of that, badass warrior shit and just become this 16-year-old blushing, which drives me crazy, by the way. I can't stand that about it, but it's also charming. Men dig it. It works in polarity. I was dating this guy once who we liked each other. I even said, hey, you seem to be attracted to me, but you're not kissing me. What's kind of going on? And that was in my badass warrior where I was always in that state. And he goes, I don't know. He says, yeah, I'm hella attracted to you. I'm like, oh, what's going on? So one day I decided, hey, let's seriously, polarity must be an issue here. Let's rock this. So I got on my combat boots. My Marines don't diet, don't go to whatever, my Marine shirt, and put on my, Princess Without the Crown stuff. When he came to the door, instead of me just opening it and walking past him to get in the car and drive, because I always drive, I stepped back and I allowed right? That, I guess that's the expression, right? Let them lead. So I allowed more space, because sometimes people wonder, how do you even do this stuff, right? How do you create that polarity? So I created more space, meaning I waited, I stepped back. And he came in to fill that space. And as the evening wore on, I stopped at the car. He opened the door. He was confused. You could see all this confusion happening with him because he's like, dude, this is totally different. Driving, all of a sudden, I saw his shoulders start to come up. His breathing started to change. He's kind of looking at me a different. He's still confused. And later on that night, yeah, I got kissed because I changed that polarity. So 100% agreement in there. But that doesn't mean that, to me, he couldn't also experience me and we couldn't actually be in a fluid dynamic, that I didn't always have to be in that space, that he didn't always have to lead. So the fact that it should be always, that feels like a problem to me of rigidity. Nothing in life is straight line. Nothing in nature is a straight line. Everything has sine waves. Everything has different things like that. So are you advocating like it's rigid?
So what if your man was fluid, with sometimes caring about your feelings and sometimes he didn't give a crap about them?
Well, if that's a question, so I don't see that masculine or feminine doesn't care about feelings. To me, that's an entirely separate thing than polarity.
No, if he's not interested in them, because what I am talking about, it say you express vulnerably, right? And he's just like, no, I'm gonna go water skiing. I'm not interested in how you feel right now.
Okay. Well, that's a dude that obviously I wouldn't be having a relationship with, because we're not on the same page with empathy or caring or anything like that.
Good. I agree with you completely. And my point with that is because a woman who is not always in her feminine and is stepping up in some way and leading to get an outcome with a man is a very similar thing, where she is disrespecting him as a man and disrespecting his leadership, right? So he's not going to like that either. And if I had a woman who's like, oh, I'm just, fluid, and, sometimes I like to lead and sometimes I like to follow, and was unwilling to respect my leadership as a man, I'd be like, oh, well, you don't really have empathy and you don't really respect me. So, see you later. I'm going to go find a woman who actually respects me as a man.
Okay, so respect to you, so respect and polarity, you said that in the beginning, I just want to reiterate that, is they're synced. Like, yes. Without polarity, you don't have respect. Without respect, you don't have polarity. That's we diverge. We definitely diverge there, because I can respect a girlfriend. I can respect other people as a leader, because I am a leader in some instances in groups that I teach and things like that. I'm definitely the leader. I wouldn't walk into a group. I teach more men than women, by the way. I wouldn't walk into a group of men and stand there going, all right, dudes, you lead. Mm-hmm. So how is it? Is it only in relationship romantically that you're speaking of this? So I can be clear about polarity and respect.
It's certainly the most important by far in polarity. And the reason why is that, you have so first of all, this is not just some mental construct energy that we're talking about. This goes much deeper than that. This is instinctual programming that every man and every woman has. And this is from a much deeper part of our biology, part of our genetics, than something that's just like a mental construct that we just learned because of our social conditioning. And so when a woman, I'll get biological here. When many animals, right, it is the woman that is, or the female that is sexually submitting to the male, right? And there is a unspoken agreement where in many animals, mammals, where the female will submit, right? And the male will want to devote, right? He'll devote resources. He'll go out and get food and protect. And why are they doing that? They're doing that for the mutual benefit of their genes being carried on, right? Because if the male did not devote, well, what's going to happen? The female is probably going to not have enough resources, or will not be protected enough, and then she might die. And then what happens to the male's offspring? Well, they die too. Genes die out. And it's the exact same thing for the male. Whereas, like, if the woman is not, or if the female is not sexually submitting to him, then he is wasting his energy. He is wasting his life force, devoting all of his time and energy to provide resources to a female that is not sexually submitting to him. So what happens to his genes? They are more likely to die out. You following me so far?
Animal behaviorist, 15 years.
Perfect. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so we are programmed, right? Male humans have the same programming where we have natural, very primitive instincts to prevent that from happening. So it's now not just sexual submission that's a problem for a man, because we are much more complex animals, essentially, right? We have a neocortex, we have belief systems. It is a woman submitting to his, essentially his purpose, his the belief or his perfect inner vision is what she is submitting to, right? It's not just sexual submission anymore. It is his inner vision that he is always leading to. So whenever she starts to lead, right, she is now causing a conflict with his inner vision, and that same primitive instinct is going to kick in and be like, oh, this feels irritating. I do not like this. It is not a good feeling when a woman does that. And then what will immediately happen is a drop in desire to devote to her, because it is in our human bodies, it is felt for people who are actually connected to it, because there's a lot of men who are completely disconnected to it. It is felt as a form of disrespect, and we do not want to devote anymore. We only want to devote when we can feel a woman respecting us, which means submitting to us.
Okay. So we'll step back into biology. So we'll come back to pheromones because that's biological. We'll go down the evolutionary path where actually the females pick the men and females lead the man to sex. Men perform, so a female will pick them. In almost every animal kingdom, the women step up, the females step up and say, are you a prime candidate? So they are leading that sex game. There are rapists in the animal kingdom. Ducks are known rapists. In fact, female ducks have created extra vaginas that don't lead to the ability to inseminate for rapist ducks. And so if they're being raped by somebody they don't want to have babies with, they actually have created a separate vagina. So that seed doesn't go there. It's amazing. There are some primates, dolphins can be rapists, absolutely. So there are some males that the female must submit to sexually. However, in the animal kingdom, that's typically not the case. The man spends a lot of time saying, I'm great for you, I'm great for you. And the female says, okay, I will let you. So that's actually how the animal kingdom works. How we work biologically is we used to not care. A man would walk up to a woman, just knock her in the head, caveman, take her. And the female would have sex with many different partners to create the ability to have a better offspring, because the more we procreate with different sperm, the stronger the offspring and the more the sperm competes, because male sperm competes. If you have sex with 3 different men, you definitely are going to get pregnant within a short period of time compared to one, because the sperm wars are a cool thing. So we have a little different take on that. And I do have a big science background. And so that's a part of the things that I teach. And so I do understand that there is a desire in men to provide that's pretty primal. Definitely. I can see that, though a lot of females are better hunters. In the lion kingdom, the male hangs around submitting to the females while the females go out and find food, because they'd all die if they had to rely on the guy. Clearly not a good leader. He's kind of a... Eh. So, I think with people... what I've seen in the world of people looking back over, you got the Neanderthals that just took what they wanted. There was no relationship really about it. Men definitely want their offspring to be theirs. In fact, they'll kill offspring that they don't think are theirs, which is why the babies tend to look like their fathers, even if they're girls, which I find totally fascinating. So the man recognizes that that's his seed that came out, more likely to provide. Though, I think it's a relatively new idea of this whole idea of a man leading and the woman submitting to him as humans. I think what you see is men inspired. I love your idea. The feminine can inspire men. Cleopatra, badass. She inspired fucking men left and right. And she was definitely in her masculine. I've seen men be inspired to step up to reach the woman. Wars have been fought over women and the desire of that. To be inspired to go out and step up higher into what you want as a man. If women all were in that feminine submission only part, I think men would get fucking bored, because men also like challenges, and challenge doesn't happen when everybody's status quo. Status quo isn't polarity either, where I'm always like this and you're always like that, because people aren't always one thing.
Okay, you've covered a lot there, so I'm going to take a step back to address a few of your points. First of all, I have ducks, so that's funny. I was going to mention some of that, but you gave a biology lesson, so there it is. Okay, yes, there are many aspects to the whole attraction, mating rituals, all that stuff, but essentially none of that is. I want to focus specifically on the polarity and respect aspect here, because you can ask any man who is who's actually in touch with his his masculine core in any way, and he will tell you that it feels irritating. There is a slight, at least a very slight feeling of irritation when a woman tries to lead. Right. And that is deeply biological. That is instinctual. And, I've addressed where that comes from. And there may be more aspects to it, that you're talking about as well. But that is a huge problem with polarity, like huge, because what that is signaling to a man, is that he is not being respected in that moment. That is a very deep primal signal that something is wrong. In a very similar way, a woman will get signaled by very slight, subtle things. For example, when a man says that he is going to do something, and it might not be a huge deal. Maybe he just says, I'm going to take out the garbage today, and he doesn't do it. How does she feel? She will feel probably not just a sense of irritation, but probably an anxiety and a loss of trust, because what that is essentially communicating is, now I cannot trust your word, right? And this is where there's a huge difficulty in understanding men and women, because to a man, it's like, oh, that's such a small deal. Why do you care about that? Right? And a lot of conflicts can happen because of something so small like that. But it is a big deal to a woman, because for a woman to feel truly safe in a relationship and feel completely at peace to just let go and submit, right? Because that requires a lot of trust, to not have to think, to not be in her head, to not be making decisions, to just stay in her body and stay in her heart and let her man lead. She needs to completely trust him. She needs to have a ton of trust for that. And so those small little things, yes, it's like, why is it such a big deal? It's a big deal because we are women, I'm not a woman. So for women, they are instinctually wired for it to be a big deal, and for their bodies to warn them when things like that happen. Just like it is a big deal to a man, even if it doesn't seem like it for a woman, to be led in any kind of way. Our bodies will warn us. And we have a big problem, especially in the spiritual community more than anything, of being disassociated from these feelings and ignoring them and thinking that it's based on woundings and all that nonsense when it has nothing to do with it. Now, how we act out on those warnings, that could be due to wounding, right? Because you could be a very insecure person or very immature person and cause a huge scene about it. But the base primal feeling, right, that is something that needs to be listened to. That's saying there is something wrong.
I think we're using the word respect. I always say men need to be trusted and women need to be adored. At the core of that biology, women need to feel that they're attractive, because the attraction is what creates a man wanting to inseminate them. And, at the base there, and men need to be trusted. So I can totally get behind that piece as if we're using that. However, to think that a woman can't be in her head, so we have full body wisdom, all right? We don't lead from our heads, our crotches. If we do that, if we're only leading from one area, like this whole spiritual woo-woo shit, it's all about your heart. Fuck that. If you're all heart-led, you're also out of balance. We've got our heads, we've got our truth, we've got our hearts, we've got our will, we've got our sex, we've got our resources. We have body wisdom. Not one of us, if we can't be in integrity until we're integrated, which is meaning that we're running on all cylinders. That's why the fluidity of going back and forth is instinctual when you're with somebody who's integrated. If I had to be out of my head all the time, I couldn't raise children. There is no way as a woman that I could raise a child just submitting to my man. How would you lead me through childbirth? How would you lead me through parenting? Like, I have to make decisions. If you're out hunting and gathering, or hunting, and I'm home gathering and raising children, I better have some access to my head. I better have some access to other things than just my submission.
Sure.
Right?
I'm just talking about in relation to a man.
Yeah. So, okay. So now you come home from hunting and I'm running around with the kids and I still have to make decisions on kids that change off from me being in hunter mode, in kid mode, thinking mode, being in my head, handling stuff. And now you walk in the door. You're not in devotion mode either at this point, because you're in hunter mode, which is an entirely different experience. And now you want to walk in and you want to be devoting to me, and I want to be devoting to you. I would say it's the same thing. And if we're in that devotional space, we can both let down, trust, and be there. And so maybe then I can switch into that. Oh, and now you're home. Everything's safe. You're in your castle. You're the king to your castle. And I'm happy to say, welcome home. I love you. Thank you for going out in the world and bringing these amazing gifts home. And now I'm safe and everything's okay. So I could step back. Yes?
Okay. Well, so there's one point that you brought up that needs to be addressed. So you're saying that you're integrated when you have, when you're able to be in your masculine or be in, I'm going to clarify. Is that what you're saying? That you're able to be in your masculine, be in your feminine, that is integration?
When you're integrated, that's the only time you experience integrity, because you don't know if you're only operating on one system or another. You have no ability to be in integrity with yourself. It's not just keeping your word. It means integrated. And when you're integrated, you're using your full human potential. Everything that makes you human, which actually has aspects of masculine, feminine, like the heart devotion, that's completely feminine. Will is right below it in your gut. That's masculine. So even in our body wisdoms, we go from feminine to masculine to feminine to masculine to feminine. We are yin and the yang. We have it all. So that's what I mean by integrated. Yes. Okay.
So when a man is not integrated, what it is going to look like is a lack of, well, there's going to be a few problems, right? But if he has feminine energy and he has masculine energy, but it is not integrated, there is going to be a lack of responsibility there, and there's going to be a lack of devotion there. So if you look at pure masculine energy, it's actually sociopathic. It is just trying to get outcomes, and all it cares about is getting its needs met, right? And there's lots of women out there, maybe pretty much all of them, that have experienced something resembling what I am describing, and it is not a fun relationship experience. And when a man has feminine energy that is unintegrated, right? He's got feminine energy, but it's unintegrated. There is going to be a lot of feminine attributes to that man. So he is going to, he might start expressing his feelings all the time. He might become really vulnerable a lot of the time with his woman. He might become less interested in leading, in purpose, in like creating an outcome. And the integration piece is when a man is able to integrate his feminine energy, instead of him just being a masculine sociopath, essentially, where he is leading, but it's all for him. It's all about what am I getting? It becomes devotional. So he takes what he's trying to create, the outcomes that he is trying to create and lead towards, and put other people under his umbrella, essentially. And of course, his woman is going to be primed to that. And of course, his children as well, but also his, his career, his business, his community, and his world. That is an integrated man where he is leading every step of the way. He is always leading on his purpose. He is always moving forward. He is not submitting to other people's, especially not his woman's leadership. But he is doing it because he is in service to other people. He's in service to his woman. He's in service to his children. He's in service to his society.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So that's awesome. And as an integrated woman, meaning that I lead just as well as I submit, we're using your words there, I think surrender, but submit, I still am confused at why that's not a dance. Because if I'm stronger in mathematics and accounting and things like that than you are, if we're in relationship and my strengths in some masculine actions are stronger than yours, why we wouldn't split that? Because that's in the animal kingdom, that's what happens. Like literally the things that people are good at and do think that's the thing you want to excel at. So why we wouldn't share that? To me, respect and trusting you would mean that we would actually share that. If we trusted each other, we would share the burden of what happens in the world and how we run our household and how we would do that. And in which case, you wouldn't be leading all the time, nor would I be submitting all the time. We'd be in that dance. And just so that's that piece that I feel. But I wanted to bring up intimacy because I wrote that on my hand while you were talking because I didn't want to forget it. When somebody's always leading and the other person's always submitting, and you use the word vulnerable, and I want you to talk more about that if you would. I see intimacy as the ability to be completely vulnerable with each other, like authentically raw, real. That's now intimacy being different than sex. Some people interchange those words. They're not interchangeable. Sex is sex. Intimacy is intimacy. You can have them both, whatever. But the ability to be intimate requires vulnerability. When my man can be my strong alpha man, and I like strong alpha men, becomes vulnerable with me when he needs a safe place to be, because I want to be safety too, and he can be in that vulnerability, we create a deeper intimacy. Now, I don't emasculate him for that. I think it fucking sucks. And so just so you women know out there, any woman that says you want your man to be vulnerable and then you emasculate him for it, I'm pissed at you. That's bullshit. So just so we're clear. Oh, sorry, that's not feminine language. I'm very upset by that notion. That I hold, I adore men. I freaking adore men. And if my man didn't have a safe place, that I wasn't that haven for him, that he had to hold that leadership every fucking moment of the day, and didn't have a safe place for him to land, and I couldn't hold that container safely, I would be mortified by that. That would be like, there would be no polarity in my relationship if that happened. If he was always in this space and I was always in that space, that would be devastating to me.
Okay, so when a man is not fully integrated, he has feminine energy, right? And he has masculine energy, and maybe he's leading a lot of the time, but it's not feminine energy. He may feel a need for that containment, for that wanting to be vulnerable with a woman. I used to want that as a man. I used to have a strong desire for that. There's been times where I've cried in front of my woman before, and I did that because I wanted to push through all of my fears. I have no desire to do that anymore. I have no interest at all, because when a man fully integrates his feminine, he no longer has an interest because what you were describing, where you are being vulnerable, whether it's a man or a woman, that is feminine vulnerability. I'm going to call it feminine vulnerability. And you were asking for definitions, so we're going to get into it. Masculine vulnerability is different. What really feminine women really want, they may think that they want a man who is operating with feminine vulnerability sometimes by sharing his feelings, all that stuff. What they really want is to feel his heart. They want to feel it fully open towards her. And masculine vulnerability, right, when a man has integrated his feminine energy, it looks very different. So when I am leading my wife, right, when I am giving to her, my heart is fully open. It is fully open, energetically giving to her at all times. I'm always thinking about her, like how I can add to her life, add value to her life, make her feel good, all of that stuff. But it is wide open, and she can feel that, right? As a woman, she can feel that. What a lot of women experience is men who do not have this feminine energy, or it's not integrated, but especially when they don't really have much of it. And so their heart is closed a lot of the time. They're deeply wounded, and they do not feel a man's open heart, and that feels bad. And a woman does not feel safe, and she doesn't feel loved in that situation. So when I'm talking about integration in a man, I call that masculine vulnerability. When a man is able to lead, right, but it is leading with devotion. It is heart open leading. It is fully energetically giving at all times. And when a man is integrated, he has no interest whatsoever in being vulnerable with his woman in a feminine way.
All right. Okay. I see you distinguishing that. And in my world, that would be a start. Like that's the basic starting point for relationship. Like that's step one, because that still is energetically setting up an exhausting, unsustainable system. And when I mean unsustainable, I mean long-term over long-term. I don't mean 5 years, 10 years. I think you said, if I read your stuff correctly, you've been teaching since 2017 or 2016, this stuff?
2020.
2020, awesome, cool. So sustainably, that experience in an energetic sense, it isn't. It's exhausting because it's holding against how natural balance or natural harmony works. Now, that's, you just have to take that from me. I've been doing this a long, long time, so I get it. That's my feeling about it. That's what I teach. So the distinction between masculine vulnerability and feminine vulnerability, it's like, okay, sounds great. Why we're not human vulnerable that's to me more important. Like that human vulnerability where each of us can be in that space, I think creates intimacy. I don't know that you can get intimacy. I understand heart devotion. I love that idea. Heart devotion is a feminine aspect. The heart is feminine. Devotion is feminine. So 100%, you can go with that experience, and the woman will receive that giving, which is also more in the feminine aspect. Yeah. So no woman would not, everyone would want to be devoted to. Absolutely. Every man would want to be respected. Absolutely. But I want to be respected too. How do you respect me? I wouldn't feel respected just by you leading. Not because I am a control freak, not because I can't be in my feminine, I actually have men. The men that you're teaching how to be those men, those have been most of my lovers for a long time. Men that can actually lead, be in their masculine, that I want to polarize with. But it doesn't, it's bigger, it's deeper than what you're saying, I feel. I feel like you're step one-ing on this.
I'd like to hear more about why you believe it is unsustainable, especially when there are plenty of examples out there of men and women in these polarized relationships that have been at it for decades. Like, at what point is it like, okay, it's been 15 years, it's now unsustainable and we need to switch? What makes you think that that's unsustainable?
No, that's a great question. But I think if you really examine those relationships, you would find that each person has their space either outside of the house or something that they're actually getting more breaks than they think they are with this leading and submission piece. Unless somebody truly, like, there's on the edge out there, there are people who 100%, want to be slaves, and they are 100% into submission and having somebody else 100% make totally their decisions for them. There's people like the Promise Keepers. They're a Christian group that basically the man contracts that he's going to run the family, provide for the family, do this. The woman does the house. The roles are very defined. That is sustainable as far as roles, if people are into that somewhat. But even that doesn't follow out. And you're right. What is sustainable? What years? How long is sustainable? I can't tell you that. I can tell you that basically energetically, it's not sustainable. And people crack and they do other things. Things happen. 50% of divorces, if it'd be great. Because if that was true, I'd be 100% teaching exactly what you're teaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully by the end of this, you might be more open to it. So what you were describing, okay, this is really important, actually. This is probably the most important thing we've discussed so far. So absolutely, there are a lot of couples that look, polarized on the surface. The man is leading, he's doing everything. The woman is just going along with it. And both are completely unhappy, right? And a lot end up in divorce or cheating. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
That is not healthy polarity. It may, on the surface, right, to someone who is a uneducated observer, that is exactly what it would look like. And I will say, I've had that exact belief before, right? I picked my woman because she is a very strong woman. She's an excellent leader in the workplace, right? She's an amazing boss. Before I started polarizing our relationship, she was a better leader than I was, right? I was actually attracted to her because of her assertiveness, because there was parts of my own masculinity that had not been fully integrated yet, right? And so we had a very 50-50 relationship, like back and forth kind of relationship. And it worked because we're relatively two healthy people. We were two relatively unpolarized people, but we both had very high self-esteem, right? So we made it work. There was attraction. I was more masculine than she was, but it was kind of maybe a 60-40, and she'd tell or ask me to do things, and leading, asking, not permissive asking. And I'd tell her to do things or just ask, or it wasn't as masculine as it could have been. And it was workable. And the reason I went from, the reason that I chose her is because I have a lot of experience dating women, like a lot. And most of them were extremely submissive women. And I very quickly got bored of them. Very quickly. It's like a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. And it's just like, I'm just not really feeling attracted to you anymore. And so what is happening there is they are very feminine. They have a lot of feminine energy, but they do not have much masculine energy. And it also has not been integrated. So with my wife, she had a lot of feminine energy and she had a lot of masculine energy. The masculine energy was not integrated. But it did cause attraction because she has a lot of self-worth, right? A lot of self-worth. And when a woman has a lot of feminine energy, but has no masculine energy and it's not integrated, she's going to not only have low self-worth, but she's also going to be setting herself up over and over again to be taken advantage of by men, right? By men who are, they're energetic takers typically, and lack honor, and they will actually attract those kind of men more than likely. But even if they attract, a somewhat good man, eventually he will lose most of the attraction for her. And I definitely, I'm not going to say that I had total integrity for most of my life, but I was a relatively good guy. And this is the experience that I had over and over again with women. So I found this extremely high self woman who, I could feel in my body, I cannot take advantage of this woman. I cannot get away with being less than, a pretty good guy. And you can feel that, right? A man can feel that and a woman can feel that. We can always feel that in each other, especially as time goes by. And so, the feminine, when she does not have masculine energy, and it's not integrated, she's a complete doormat. She will submit to undevoted leadership. And a man will feel that and then not want to devote to her because his body is saying, this is a low value woman, right? In the animal kingdom, it would be the equivalent of like a monkey or something, having sex with a female monkey and then being like, your genes are very low value. I'm not going to bother devoting my resources to this. I'm going to, go find somebody else, some other monkey to impregnate, right? That's essentially what the man's genes are saying, because we still have that primitive programming. And so what I teach, and this is what healthy polarity is, it is the development of self-worth in a woman through her feminine, because what a lot of women do, they develop their self-worth by developing masculine energy, right? Becoming more assertive, asking for what they want, being, confident in that kind of way. And then it's always a competition with a man and a woman. And then a man's he can't devote to that, right? Because he's going to feel disrespected. And then it's a competition. Whereas when a woman is able to express, feminine woman, she expresses her feelings. That's the main way that she expresses her needs, but there's other ways to do that as well. Of course, there's other forms of feminine communication. And she is essentially not willing to submit to a man's leadership if it's not devoted, right? Now, of course, there can be some partial devotion and partial submission, but she's not going to submit all the way to a man when he is not demonstrating full devotion to her. This is something that can be taken deeper until full devotion and full submission. But a woman is dishonoring herself. She's dishonoring her own heart. She's disrespecting herself when she submits to leadership that is not just as devoted to how much that she's submitting. And feelings especially are important, right? And this is why being vulnerable is so important, because if she won't know if a man truly wants to devote to her unless she is being vulnerable, unless she's using feminine communication. Because if my woman was not submitting to me and wasn't being feminine and expressing herself vulnerably, I would lose that desire, that instinct to devote to her. But when she is expressing in that way, I feel respected, and I feel that instinctual energy of, I just want to give more to you. And if a woman is vulnerable, so she's respecting a man by not leading, and a man is not interested in stepping up and caring about her feelings, right? Holding space for that, understanding it, changing his behavior in some way if it's appropriate to do so. Sometimes it's not, but in most cases it is. Almost always it is with my wife, because when she tells me her feelings, I'm usually dropping the ball in some way. When a man is demonstrating a lack of devotion, then a high self-worth feminine woman, it's just like, I feel really uncomfortable submitting. Or she doesn't have to use those words, but that's essentially the message that she's giving. And she should, because she should never dishonor herself. And there's so much misunderstanding in my work about this, but it is fundamental. It is really the core of what I teach, is that a woman never dishonors herself. She never dishonors her heart. And because not only is that going to hurt her, it's also going to depolarize the relationship. Like all of the many feminine women I've been with that did not demonstrate that high self-worth, where I lost that attraction.
All right, I'm going to hang on to the pieces.
I know that was a lot.
We both have a lot to say. It's like, yeah. So number one, your premise about animals, you got to start there, is wrong. Males don't make the decision to spread their seed to high value females. That's incorrect. High value females take on, they are the ones that pick. It's always been that way. Females in the animal kingdom pick the men. That's why the duck with her vagina, she can choose whether or not she wants to be inseminated by that man, by that male duck or not. So if you start with that premise, it might change a lot of what you think. So, but hang on a second. I know, right? Yeah. I want to say something. I can't tell you how many times I've had to go, okay. Just breathe. Oh, it's great. Passion is awesome.
A good exercise in staying centered. Continue.
It's great. It's great. So, and even by the act of a woman submitting to her man, she's actually leading. She's still leading. Her vulnerability, her submission is actually leading her man to then be in devotion. I'm taking your words here. If a woman submits, right, then, and she has to be vulnerable first, which is fine. I believe in teaching people how to be self-trusting. If they trust themselves fully, vulnerability, man or female, it's easy because you're going to be okay no matter what happens. So you can put yourself out there and be vulnerable because you're always going to be okay. And she puts herself out there. That engages the man's drive, natural instinct to devote. That's according to you. So then he devotes. And then by her telling him her feelings, and he then is staying in that devotion. Well, that's polarity, and that's the woman leading essentially by her strength to be vulnerable in an uncertain time, because she's got to be vulnerable before she finds out if you're a good leader. She's got to have the strength, and that vulnerability and that strength of will to do it is not a feminine quality. That's actually from the gut. That will and courage to lead through vulnerability is actually a masculine quality energetically, to be courageous. So in her courage to be vulnerable and to lay herself out there, she allows, that vulnerability. And then the man goes, yes, he's inspired. Yes. What man is not inspired by the trust that a woman gives him when she opens her heart and her soul to him? Absolutely. I mean, now, like you said, whether he can lead or not, whether he's wounded or not, whether or not he's got it together or not, whatever, that's to be said. But I'm 100% in agreement that as a woman, I know that my vulnerability, and I do lead that way, will be having a man want to devote to me. Not only that, let's take it to the next step. In lovemaking, I love it when a man leads in sex. That's awesome. I mean, I'm definitely down for that. And yet once a man enters me, he's no longer leading, because by the very token of entering the feminine who is in true arousal, not kind of aroused, but fully engorged, completely on fire, 100%, the man loses himself. That's where he's going to hold the hands of God. That's where he's going to up-level his game as a human being, is in that total surrender into that feminine fire. The most feminine aspect you can have is a woman who is like fully engorged, fully turned on, fully receptive, taking you into her. And in that moment, if a man has learned ejaculation mastery, which is one of the ways to keep your masculinity high, by the way, if a man practices seed retention, he doesn't ever feminize after sex. He stays in his masculine. And she never loses that interest in him because he's not keen anymore. But in that moment of that ultimate arousal, passion there, he does die a little. He does allow that masculine part to meld and merge. And to me, that is fucking where the awesome sauce really is. Even more than the day-to-day, when you can become that connected, that devoted to each other, that surrendered to each other, that empowered to each other, there is where relationships flourish to an extent that the day-to-day leading, surrendering stuff kind of pales.
Okay, I had to write down 2 points here.
Watching you writing. Okay, don't forget this.
I didn't want to forget these. Okay,
awesome.
so first of all, you are correct that vulnerability requires masculine energy. But when you are expressing, it is not masculine energy. It is not leading. A very feminine woman has trouble being vulnerable because you are absolutely right. It requires a high degree of confidence, especially to do it frequently, right? Like, that's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Full agreement. And so what I teach and what we teach in our groups is being it's integrating masculine energy, because there's a lot of women and they might have masculine energy or they might not have much, but either way it's not integrated. So the practice of being vulnerable is actually a step by step. Every time you do it, you are integrating your masculine energy into your feminine energy, right? So when you express, it is actually fully feminine, and it feels fully feminine to a man, right? That's why it feels really good, because he's not, and it's not leading. And I just wanted to clarify this point about a woman going first. A man can and should, right from the get-go, be a leader and act with devotion, right? Whenever I interact with anybody, whether, well, obviously I'm not romantically, sexually interested because I'm married, but I'm always leading with devotion to start, because that's what I do. That is my default state as a man now, is I am always leading with devotion. And so as a woman, it's also should be the same thing, right? Because really, it's like if you're waiting around for someone else to do something, to be yourself, right? To be your best self, to be your polarized self, well, that's a very kind of disempowered place to be, right? So I am always empowered. I'm always going first. And a woman should always be vulnerable right from the get-go as well, until a man starts demonstrating that this guy is not safe in some way. And that is, of course, another thing that we really talk about. And I'm sure you would find this important as well with your sexual predator
takedown
interest in that. But to listen to your body as a woman, to honor your heart, because so often women dishonor themselves. They dishonor their heart and they listen to their mind instead of their heart, instead of their body. And that's a big part about integrating that masculine energy, is not only learning to be vulnerable, but also being willing to walk away once they start to feel that, like, oh, this doesn't feel good. My heart's being abused in some way and manipulated, attacked, not held space for. Like, that's really important. And that is like foundational, because submission without the ability to be vulnerable, to express her needs as a woman, and the ability to walk away from a lack of devotion, both of which require integrated masculine energy, is setting yourself up to be a doormat. And the feminine without the masculine, that is being a doormat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel you. And the problem with that is that women frequently think if they follow what their body is telling them, they only can follow what their body is telling them if they are trauma-free. Because if they have trauma, they're following what their patterns are and behaviors. And that's where pheromones kick in again. Absolutely, 100%. Women react more than men to do it. But if a woman has, opposite immunity and he's high in her pheromone level, she 100% believes they're soulmates, doesn't see the danger, because in that high arousal state, her critical thinking is shut off. And so there's that piece. Like, if that piece isn't taught, and I think it's pretty criminal that we don't teach everybody about that, especially women, because so many women go down the primrose path after what they believe is, their body's telling them, yes, yes. Well, because pheromones override every other thing on the planet, straight into the limbic system, from the nose, limbic system, boom, done. More than visual, more than anything else. you are a slave. If you want to talk about submission, we 100% submit to our pheromones. So, yeah, it's a little bit difficult to keep people safe if they don't have that piece of information.
I agree.
So, you know, let's make sure that people have that. And what did you think about, I know you had that kind of funny laugh when I was talking about seed retention and how basically I think if my man is devoting to me, he's also devoting to not letting me, abandoning me in sex. And when he ejaculates, not orgasm, ejaculation are separate things. A lot of men don't know that. A lot of women don't know that. But if he does go to ejaculation, if we're not procreating every time, he literally is dropping me like a hot potato right in the midst of my most needed connection time. So do you guys address that too?
We don't address that, but I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's not our focus.
Yeah.
Our main focus is the submission piece. It's not even really sex. There's lots of teachers that are, you know, much more experts in that area than I have any interest in teaching. So we're about the communication piece, the respect piece, and the polarity in the relationship. But absolutely, polarity is incredibly important during sex, and you know that's really the most polarized that a relationship can be is during sex as well. So absolutely really important.
Yeah, I think because without that polarity, I mean, that's the reason we want polarity even more so, because like you say, there's when you're keeping some polarity happening, it makes things a lot more clear. You're not in competition and conflict as much. Definitely agree on that. But I don't think it has to be just the woman is feminine and just the man is leading. I think it's fluid. I think it can be fluid. And if you're integrated really well, that dance is incredible and makes really power dynamic couples. But once again, can't be from trauma, can't be from wounding. The man and woman both need to be in their highest integrity and confident and everything else in their abilities to be in that state. And I'll always, but once again, I'm bottoming from the bottom. And I think almost all, really, that's what's happening when men want what women have, typically more. That is once again the biological imperative. And so women do actually lead in that expression of being in the feminine, and they turn a man off easily. I mean, if I want to turn a man off, I can just totally straight up confront him in a straight up one-on-one. I can even be dressed in my pretty princess stuff. So
that would do it. That would do it for me. That would put me off.
So
okay, there's a few points I wrote down, and one of them I had forgotten from before. Actually, two of them. Back to the sex in the animal kingdom. You know, it is true that because of the way that we are wired, you know, a man and an animal male can ejaculate 1 time a day, 2 times a day, whatever, and a female has a lot of repercussions to being impregnated by a low-value man with low-value sperm. So yes, in that respect, she is choosing to sexually submit to him. However, the male is still choosing to devote to her, right? He can impregnate her and then leave afterwards. He has absolutely free choice to continue to devote or not. And so that's a really important piece too, because if a woman, or say a female, well, we can say woman, you know, she submits at first, right? Just like an animal might submit at first and then stop submitting. Well, a man is going to initially want to devote, and then all of a sudden, no, that doesn't feel good anymore, because that is the equivalent when a woman does that, whether she's still sexually submitting or not. That is still the message of, I am not submitting to you anymore. And the male body, that it will give the signal of, okay, you are not submitting to me anymore. I do not want to continue to devote. And so that's a really important piece. The other piece I wanted to address, you were saying that it eventually gets draining or boring of continuing to have that high polarized dynamic. So yes, it does in the case that I brought up before, where a woman is kind of a doormat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never get bored in any way. I never get drained in any way of devoting to my wife. It energizes me, right? And the more feminine that a woman becomes, the more energizing it becomes for a man. And the reason why is because what a man needs, one of his deepest needs, his really greatest needs it feeds into, is the need to be received, right? His leadership needs to be received.
Yeah.
And there's two parts to that. One part is submitting to his leadership. And the other part is, actually the woman actually receiving that in and showing appreciation for it. And by that, I don't mean like, thank you for cutting the lawn, something like that, which is actually energetically masculine. When you go into those compliments, it's not about that. It's about when you take in a man's gifts, which are all through his leadership. All of a man's gifts have to be through his leadership for it to feel good for him to give. Otherwise, it's a gift of submission. A feminine woman will take that in, and she will feel that, she's being penetrated essentially by that gift. And if she's very feminine and also has developed because this is a skill set in itself, the ability to really show that as you become more feminine, you will show your reception of him. And a good example, you talked about sex, so let's go back to sex here. Think of the difference between a woman who is completely like a jellyfish, or like she's a fish, she doesn't move, right? And she doesn't make noises, right? It's just like, is this woman even alive, right? So and I've experienced that as a man, that does not feel good. That feels awkward and weird and draining, really. Whereas when a woman is receiving a man during sex, she's expressive, right? She like vocal, doesn't have to be words, but you can tell it's like, I am being received right now. She is definitely receiving me, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, everything. And that energizes a man during sex and outside of sex. So I can give to my wife indefinitely, and I will only continue to get energized, and it will create a energetic cycle where I am giving, right? That requires energy. She receives that energy, and shows that and feels good because of it. So that is added value into our relationship. And through her expression of both through her submission to the gift, plus showing appreciation for the gift, that energizes me back as a man. I feel respected and I feel received. And now it's like, damn, I want to go do some more for her. What else can I do? Right? So there is no energy drain. The energy drain comes, for a man, for both actually, when a woman tries to lead or does not receive him, or tries to stop him, right, by saying no instead of just being vulnerable so he can continue to change his leadership. That's the energy drain, because then he feels disrespected. And it might just feel like slight irritation. I'm not saying it's like, oh, I feel so disrespected right now, but he feels that mild irritation. And then he experiences a drop in energy and a loss of wanting to continue that cycle of devotion. And of course, a masculine leader, he can get that cycle going again. But the more resistant his woman is, the more there is going to be an energy drain.
Yeah, 100%. And you just told me that women are leading. Again, this whole conversation was the woman leads by being able to receive her man. And the whole cycle really is about that feminine energy, because a man can lead over there. Like a man can go lead, but he's going to be exhausted just leading. Whereas a woman can be in that cycle of receiving and energized without it. Now, I never, when I get into a relationship, one of my contracts, and this flips the fuck out of most women, like freak out when I say this, okay? I tell them I make a contract with my partner that I'm never going to say no to sex. I'm never saying no to sex, never saying no to what he asks about sex. And the reason I do that is because, number one, it takes that desperation piece that men are always trying to figure out what they can do to get the sex. That takes that off the table. There is no power struggle around sex. And most women are freaked out by, I can't believe you would do that. because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, it tells you really quick where a man is at in his life, because, they're like, what if he wants to have sex when you're in pain? I'm like, really? Then what kind of person is he?
Exactly.
All right. Exactly. So there's that tried and true. But I still feel like when I hear you talk, it really is the woman that's leading the show that gives the man energy, that allows him to be in that space of devotion, because you can lead without devotion. It's not the best thing. It's like you can surrender or submit without devotion. Not the best thing. Devotion really is a big key. I agree. And that cycle of giving and receiving absolutely is a thing that goes around and around like that. So we're in agreement with that for sure. I think my biggest part is the idea that it feels like what you're saying is so static. This is really my big argument around this, is this idea that, masculine is always like this and feminine is always like this, and why they can't dance. What breaks down if they actually understand how to dance with each other in fluidity? Where do you think the breakdown happens?
Well, there's multiple breakdowns, and as I expressed as a man, the breakdown is when either my leadership is not received, and so I don't get that energy back, or my wife tries to lead me in any way, subtle, overt, manipulative, anything that I feel, because then I cannot continue to devote, because it's not devotion. I'm actually submitting if I'm going to give that gift, because she's already tried energetically leading. And so I want to clarify what you are talking about when you say a woman is leading, because we need to be clear on these definitions. When I say a man is leading, he is trying to get an outcome. Yeah. That's what leadership is. A woman is never trying to get an outcome. If she's vulnerable to get an outcome, she's manipulating him. If she is submitting to get an outcome, she's manipulating him. If she is doing absolutely anything to get an outcome, she is manipulating him. And yes, that would be leadership, and he would be submitting to that. But that is that's not feminine. That's masculine.
Great. So, think about a moment. Let's just reverse that and put that on you, that you're never going to have an outcome, that your whole point is not to have an outcome. So if I want to have children, that would be an outcome. So I'm not supposed to feel like I want children. I'm not going to tell a man I want children. I'm not going to lead him to children. I'm going to just devote to him and hope I'm going to tell him I long for children. But if I long for children, isn't that me also trying to have an outcome?
You can, and this gets into feminine communication, but you can absolutely express your needs, right, in a feminine way where you're not trying to get an outcome. So in this specific, having a child, just try to think the best way we always get these specific examples. Then what is the best way to express that in a feminine way? Yeah. A woman certainly could express that from a place of vulnerability. Like, how does it feel to not have a child? How does it feel to not know whether your man wants to have a child, right? So all she's doing is expressing. Of course, a woman can want something. Of course, she can desire things. But when she is expressing what she wants or needs, is she trying to get an outcome? And that's where, one of the big feminine communication pieces is permission, right? Where, you're expressing yourself, right? It's like, you could say, like, can we have a baby, or can you impregnate, or actually that would be leading, but
yeah, give me one. How do we do this?
If you're expressing from a truly permissive place, what you are essentially doing is you are not trying to get an outcome. You are asking your man if it is okay if he for her to receive an outcome, right? So it's asking, but not trying to get it. There's a difference in energy there. And even in a really subtle way, I'll give you a subtle example. The difference between, hey, can you get me a coffee, and can I have a coffee? Of course, you could actually express, can I have a coffee, as a directive, right? Because you can change the energy. Words strongly influence the energy, but you can shift that energy even with the same words. But from a truly permissive place, you can say, can I have a coffee? And there's no direction in it. There is no trying to get an outcome. It is purely asking. And she is essentially, when that is truly permissive, she is opening herself up to whatever outcome her man decides to give her, whether it's a yes or a no. That's when it's truly permissive. And when you say, like, can you do this? There is an element of leading there, and it's not true feminine openness. There's a lack. There's masculine energy in that. And the whole can you, can I, it sounds so subtle and can even sound ridiculous to someone that's not really in touch with these energies. But it really does make a difference to a man, right? It's hard. It's similar to that thing with the full trust that we were talking about before, like where a man is always honorable with his word. Seems silly to a man, to a man, but to a woman, she feels that difference in her body.
Well, the reason she feels the difference in her body is if a man's word isn't trustworthy, when he says, I love you, you don't trust it either. So from a feminine perspective, I'll tell you that's where that goes. But you still can't explain to me, and I really want to know. I'd like to role play. I want to know how I can not think of an outcome, like having a baby is an outcome, wanting a family is an outcome. Mm-hmm. How do I just don't understand how in the world as a woman, I mean, I can get, if you just said to me, you need to ask permission, that would be like, oh, hey, Zach, can I have permission to have a baby with you? I mean, that's, that's, can I have permission for your seed to impregnate me? I mean, that's clear, right? I could say, okay, I have to ask you permission, but that's still me wanting an outcome. And so where in the world, I mean, maybe my outcome is to be with you. So like I'm wandering around, la, 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 I see you, I want to be with you, but I can't have an outcome. How do I femininely, do I just flash you? That's an outcome. How do I express myself?
So you can want an outcome. There's nothing wrong with wanting an outcome. Of course, a woman wants outcomes, right? There's a difference between wanting outcomes and trying to energetically get one, right? So
why wouldn't I?
Pardon?
I was going to say, why wouldn't I want to, though? Why do I not want an outcome?
You do want an outcome.
Okay.
You're going to want outcomes, and it's fine to want them, is what I'm saying. It's just when you want an outcome, are you able to express in a way where you're not leading to get it? You're just expressing. So, for example, we'll use the baby example. Fine. How does it make you feel to not have a baby? What is the problem?
So I would say, because I want to role play this, because I think people need to understand this. This is where I'm confused, so other people are confused in this, because I want to get it.
Go for it. I'll be your man. You express vulnerably.
All right. So vulnerably, I can't think of a way that it isn't me wanting you to see my point of view on having a baby. So I could say, in my body, I really, really want to feel life. That's a vulnerable statement.
It's a vulnerable statement, but it's not really clear what you're wanting.
Okay. All right. So vulnerable statement. It would be my deepest desire. I feel a yearning to have a baby, have our baby. Okay.
Sorry. You know what? I need to be more clear in my leadership. Vulnerable statement, the easiest way to be really vulnerable, I feel statement. So I feel X. Right. So maybe you're having a moment, like you're thinking about wanting a baby in your life and you don't have one. And you feel what do you feel in your body? I feel
Zach, I really feel the call to be a mother and to be able to have a child with you.
Just the I feel X. What's the feeling?
I'm feeling desire. I'm feeling a longing. I'm feeling a emptiness. I'm feeling a piece of missing. Those are my feelings.
Okay, that can work. So how to explain this, because this is a weird, the baby one I haven't been asked before yet, so I haven't had time to think about it. So it's a good one, a good challenge.
We can take one that I'm okay with that. If it's easier, if we can get to our point.
Okay, so a really easy one. Here's a really easy one. So let's say that I have not been communicating with you for a few days. Like I just seem really distant and whatever. So what feeling is happening in your body? Something negative.
Zach, I'm feeling really disconnected.
Okay. So, and what is and that'll be fine, right? So good man, he's going to actually lead on that.
I'm feeling lonely. Zach, I'm really feeling lonely.
That's beautiful. Oh, you're feeling lonely. Why are you feeling lonely?
I feel disconnected. I miss spending time with you.
Okay. So you don't think we've spent enough time together recently?
That's true.
Okay. You know what? I've been really busy with work, and you're right. I haven't really been prioritizing you. Let's go out. We're going to go out for dinner tonight. I'm going to take you out on a date.
So where was I not wanting an outcome? Where did I not have an expectation?
You can want an outcome, right? There's a difference between, and there's semantics here, but you can want that outcome, but you're not leading to get one. So if you said those words, if you were vulnerable in that moment, and you were trying to get an outcome, it's like, oh, I'm gonna say this, and I'm trying to get an outcome when I say it. Well, yeah, you're just manipulating. You're leading, essentially.
I do have an outcome. My outcome is to love you and spend more time with you and be in your presence.
Yes. Is that the reason that in the moment when you said those words, did you say it to manipulate, or did you say it because that's just what you're feeling in your heart and you wanted to express it?
I'm feeling connection. I'm feeling lack of connection. I'm feeling you're the love of my life, and I want to be with you and feel you and experience you.
Yeah. Okay. So those are feelings, but were you trying to get an outcome?
If I wasn't feeling those things, like I didn't even notice that you haven't been around, then no. But our feelings are indeed, if you said no to me, so let's role play that you don't have time. Because I think this is where you want to go, right? So I've expressed that to you. I'm feeling really lonely, Zach. I really miss just feeling you and being with you and smelling you.
You know what? Okay. Why? Okay. So you miss me. You know what? I've just been really busy with work right now, and this is really important right now, what I'm doing in my life. I really want to give you more time, but for the next few days, I really need to focus on this. It's extremely important, and I'm really sorry that I haven't been able to give you that time. And we could talk more about your feelings.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's awesome. That would be great, because I can, I've got my hand. I'll just be over here with my hand. I'll just tell you about it before I go.
Yeah.
Honey, your work is incredibly important, and I absolutely respect your leadership and that you put us as a priority because you're working. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to pleasure myself, and I'm going to be thinking about you while I do it.
Well, so does that answer that question on the outcome? Because this is the heart of like masculine and feminine communication. Feminine communication is not trying to get an outcome. And this is a trap that so many women fall into, where they think that they are being feminine, right? They might be expressing their feelings. They're not directly leading their man, but there is a covert leadership energy to it, right? Because they are trying to get an outcome, and then a man doesn't respond well to it, and then a woman's like, oh, you don't care about my feelings, you're a narcissist. And yes, there are some men that are narcissists or cannot handle a woman's feelings, but most of the time that's not what's actually going on. It's that a woman is not, she doesn't even know what her feminine energy is, and she's actually using masculine energy but in a feminine costume to try to get an outcome. And the man feels that. He might not know why he feels it, but he feels it, and he has no interest in devoting in that case. He might just get angry, he might be dismissive, he might be abusive, none of which are appropriate, mature responses, but that's where that's coming from. He feels the manipulation. So when a woman is in her feminine, she is never manipulating. Manipulating is a covert form of leadership and trying to get an outcome, and that is energetically masculine.
Yeah, topping from the bottom, for sure. I am really comfortable with vulnerability. I'm really comfortable with expressing needs without an outcome. That's not a problem. That takes a lot of courage, obviously, because you can't feel personally rejected. It's like, do you want to go to the zoo? No, thanks, honey. I don't want to go to the zoo. The same way I feel about sex. It's an activity. If somebody isn't into it right then, that's fine. It doesn't mean they hate me, don't like me, I'm not attractive, whatever. So got all that down. And I will still say that this is putting a lot of, I would say the most difficult part of this is the feminine aspect. Because for a man to lead, he's got to be an effective leader. He can learn how to do that. For a woman to step into your version of what the feminine is, which is expressing feelings without an outcome, without the expectation of an outcome. So expressing myself, having an outcome, I want to be with you. Expressing that to you vulnerably without expecting an outcome. I understand why you're talking about submission now, because now we're talking, I seriously am in a disempowered space. Because if that's how I feel. I don't have a problem vulnerably. I don't have a problem with you saying no. My big problem comes from I'm supposed to express myself, but not have any expectations of an outcome. It's like, I'd be like, dude, you do you, I'll do me. And maybe I'm too masculine in that. Maybe I'm too feminine in that. I've had great leaders, men. I've had men with great polarity. And I'm working that. I'm thinking about how this is. I can totally say what I want. I can totally be a no. I can feel comfortable in that no. I'd like to talk to a woman who embodies that experience and really dissect how it is that she isn't leading, manipulating, that and my level of consciousness is high. So what does it attain to be that woman? Because I can teach a man leadership. I can probably teach a woman this if I understand it, but I'm still don't know. Just like when a woman fakes an orgasm, men can't tell, even men who think they can. This is still one of those pieces where really, as a man, I guarantee you that I could be in that space of total submission. You'd never know that I was wanting an outcome. Because I can make that happen energetically. It's a different energetic feeling.
Sorry, did you just say that a man would never be able to tell if you were trying to get an outcome or not?
I'm saying that most men, if the woman actually is in charge of her energy system, her energy mastery, no, not if she's saying, well, if she's trying to get one. I'm saying in this subtlety right here. Can a man really tell if a woman totally trusts him and she's in receptivity of him? A man will always be led by the woman's desired outcome. That is biology. So you're just asking women to be more covert instead of just more honest.
No, it's actually being it is being more trusting is what it is, because if she has to try to get an outcome, then she doesn't trust. A woman can rationalize it however she wants, but essentially what's happening is she just doesn't trust a man to give her that outcome if she doesn't try to get it, right? My wife never has to try to get an outcome with me. All she has to do is express what the problem is, and that can be her feelings, that can be, the house is on fire, whatever it is. Right. And it's like, oh, that's a big problem. I don't want you to have that problem. I don't want you to be feeling bad because of that problem. I'm going to go take care of it for you. There's nothing covert about it. She is just expressing her problem to me.
Okay. I want a baby.
So that's leading. And that's leading because she is offering the solution. And this is where this is another aspect that seems like, why is this such a big deal? But it really is to a man. not in a masculine, like not a really feminized man, but to anyone who is masculine at all, it's a big deal. Where if you give the man the solution already, it takes away from so much of his ability to give the gift. The enjoyment, so much of the enjoyment of giving the gift is in solving what the problem is, right?
Okay.
And so if she just expresses the problem, then to a man it can be like, oh, I want to solve that problem. I've got a solution. I'm going to implement it. So, and that's part of the gift giving for a man. That feels really good. If a woman gives him the solution, then all he can really do now is execute for her. There's nothing else that he can do as a man, and that will make him feel like a slave. And I mean, I'm not saying like he's going to cry about it or anything, but energetically, there's just that slight irritation of like something feels off there if he's in touch at all. And the other problem with that is when a woman says, I want this, that is probably impossible to express without trying, at least on some subtle level, of trying to get an outcome, because you're already thinking about the outcome. You're already expressing the outcome that you want. If
Right.
you are expressing the problem, then you're not in, it's going to be much more difficult to be trying to lead to get that outcome, unless you're manipulating, unless you're a manipulative person. And then it's easy to say anything and try to get an outcome.
Okay. I feel horny.
Great. That's a big problem. And I would want to solve that for you as your man, right? That would feel good. That's a perfect form of vulnerable expression.
But I want sex isn't.
Right. That would be masculine. As he goes up to her and grabs her and has sex with her.
Yeah, I mean, you're solving a problem either way. I'm horny, I want sex. I want it with you. You're the one solving that problem.
Yes, but I want sex is also saying what the solution is to that problem, which is...
Well, I'm not always going to get an orgasm when we have sex. So if I want an orgasm.
Yeah, so same thing. You're saying the solution that you want. Right. If you say anything with I want, then we're now in solution territory. We're in leading territory. And that's why communication, specific words are so important, because, you know, this is so much of the problem with the spiritual community in general, the masculine, feminine community in general. It is so abstract, so theoretical. Everything sounds really nice. You read a book on it or you listen to a coach on it and it's like, oh, that sounds nice. How the hell do I apply that? How do I actually become feminine? Well, using specific wording is a gateway to get into your gender specific energy and stay there. And so, you know, that's what I teach. I teach you how to get in there. I teach you exactly what it feels like. And I teach you to make it really easy to stay there all the time. And of course, when you are really in your energy, right, you're very polarized naturally. It's not someone that's polarized you. It's just you're naturally in your feminine or in your masculine. Then it is now easier to be more flexible with your wording to an extent. But words do matter because we have associated meaning to those words.
Yeah, I think I said that at the very beginning of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the definitions of these things? Okay, well, I don't find most of what you're saying. I agree with you with the spiritual, abstract, fluffy bullshit. You know, I'm one of the, into spirituality. I teach it and I land the plane like, I do not live in the la 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 la. And I do agree with you on words matter. And so what I heard from you, and it took all of this time, was the gateway that you're teaching simple methods for people to feel into their masculine, their feminine by using words, by using mostly words, or is it actions and words?
Yeah.
Words and actions. Okay. I teach people authenticity and polarization and how to flow through both, because I think it's a much more textured, varied world to be able to flow into what it is you desire and want. So, we both want people to have better lives and better sex and better relationships. Absolutely. I love that. I love that part of it. And I think, I'd be down with experimenting because I love to experiment and explore. And I would also find it like, dude, if I couldn't respect my man, if I couldn't say I want sex and he say yes or no, if I had to figure it out. And I get that's a masculine thing, and it's okay. And I could also just walk up to him and, rub my breasts on him and be but that's also wanting something to get something.
Yeah, well, yes, if you are doing it to try to get an outcome, then that would be masculine. If you did it because it's just inside your body and you just can't get it out without
that is an outcome. That's an outcome. That's an outcome. But it's an outcome either way. My body's telling me I want you, and I'm going to follow that flow of my body, and then I'm going to do what it is. Now, I believe, yes, I can take a rejection or a no, or I can't do it now. I have to do that gracefully. Otherwise, it is manipulation, and otherwise it is covert, and it's passive and all those. But if I can be how I want to be, and you can express yourself exactly how, Ed, I'm not really turned on by how you're being right now. That's cool, right? That's one thing, but I still think that's stifling a whole bunch if I can't range in how I express myself. And I think if a man has such a limited base that he feels that irritated, taken off his leadership skills, not masculine, not polarized, not turned on, if it takes that little, and just like I would say, if it takes so little for a woman to be thrown off her game, then there's something wrong inherently with this bigger picture.
Okay.
That's how I feel about that.
Okay. We're going to have to wrap things up in a few minutes, but I'll get this point out just to address that. And then I want to give you a chance just to, if you have anything to, honestly, this has been such a pleasure. A great conversation, totally respectful. It's exactly how conversation should be about this stuff. No personal attacks or anything like that. So if you just want to share anything about your business, your work, I'm happy for you to do that here. And you deserve it, because to have the courage to actually come on and accept my challenge, that's totally awesome. And I love it. You're the only one. So yeah, you deserve that. So what you are saying, you are right in the fact that if a man or a woman, right? But in this case, what we're talking about is a man, if it totally knocks him off his game, right? That's a problem. And he should be working on staying centered no matter what he is thrown at him. I fully agree with that 100%. Become as centered as possible. But the problem is that many men have become very confused with the difference between being centered and just being totally disassociated from their actual instincts, right? And that's important, because we need to honor those instincts. So a man can be completely centered, but he will still feel that no matter what, right? He's going to feel like that slight, that just doesn't feel good. That feels depolarizing. He will, and of course he can repolarize things. If he's a dominant man, he will be able to repolarize that immediately, but he will feel that signal first, and that doesn't feel good. And the more that his woman is trying to lead, trying to get outcomes, the more he's going to feel that. And in the perfect man, of course, can continue to handle that and continue to polarize that. And unfortunately, a lot of women have that kind of disempowered belief that a man should be doing that for her, right? It's like, you're responsible for polarizing things, when in reality, it is both man and woman that are responsible for what they're co-creating together. And that's really, really important. And so, I take responsibility as a man to polarize my relationship. And I think that if any woman has the belief that, a man should just be able to accept anything that she throws at him, even if she's leading and being disrespectful, yes, that's true. But if you continue with that attitude, you're going to continue to emasculate your man. You're going to continue to depolarize the relationship, cause conflict, potentially cause abuse. Not that there's an excuse for abuse, but that is often the result of it with more immature men. And it's just unnecessary problems. Instead of recognizing, like, I'm going to take responsibility for what I'm co-creating and start doing the work, polarize myself to polarize the relationship. And my last thing I'll say about Cleopatra, because you mentioned, so many men are after devoting to her and doing whatever. They're not devoting. What they're actually doing is they're submissive to her. and they will give all of their resources to her. They'll give her whatever she wants. She's a very powerful masculine woman without her submission at all. A man cannot devote through anything except his leadership. So if he's giving to her for any other reason, through her leadership, her expectations, anything like that, then he is emasculating himself. And a lot of men have deluded themselves into thinking that, oh, I'm such a devotional man, when the entire relationship, all he is experiencing is emasculation. Because subtly, you know, it might seem like, oh, he's in the provider role. You know, it's sort of, it looks like a polarized dynamic, but it's completely depolarized, because energetically, underneath the actual actions, he is submitting to her. And that is why a woman's like, oh, I'm going to go cheat on this guy, or I'm just not happy, right? Because a woman feels that, a man feels that, and neither partner benefit.
Cool.
I'll let you have the last word if there's anything else that you want to say, and then you can talk about
Men
yourself.
need to be trusted. Women need to be adored. You know, and is that true for absolutely everybody? No, but mostly, yes. Polarity is awesome. Yes. These things we agree on. Awesome sauce. And thank you. Yes, I absolutely was looking forward to this conversation. Had a lot of fun. I like to be curious. And, you know, I like to think and see if I can expand and change my mind and think and feel like that. And yeah, so I basically feel like for the most part, yeah, I can be on board. And I think there can be even more than what you're saying. That's how I'm left with that. Awesome sauce, fun. I got to wear my pretty princess, which tell you would be cracking up every single person that knows me, because that is not how they're seen. And I have some stuff to think about, and that's cool. And groovy. I think more people should have debates. I think it's great for us to flex our things, to see how solid we are in what we're teaching, to kind of have to find the chinks and the other things, to find the parts that are strong. So I think it helps develop better leadership and teachers when we can do this kind of stuff. I think more people should do this. And thanks for your respect and your great leadership in this. I appreciate that too. And yeah, I think that's it. What do I do? I think people really know that. I help people transform trauma and unwanted behaviors through ancient techniques and new biohacking science. So that's what I do. And if you want to have great sex, yeah, I'm good at that too.
You got a website?
Yeah, I do. learningtantra.com.
Perfect. Yeah, this has been an absolutely amazing debate. You've been a very worthy challenger, and thank you so much for coming on. This was definitely the highlight of my day and possibly week. This was really fun. And thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot. And from either side of the debate expanded your mind in some way, and were able to let some of our ideas in that maybe you were initially not thinking of or resistant to. That's fantastic. If anyone's interested in my work, you can go to relationshipyourdreams.com. I think you have a pretty good idea of what I teach at this point. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Tanja. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.